Welcome to the Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2, Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank 4Low Magazine for contributing to the success of this podcast. 4Low Magazine, an enthusiast magazine for the 4x4 off-road community. All right, well, thank you for joining us with another episode of Conversations with Big Rich, and we have none other than Charlie Melchner with us today. He's one of the OG competitive rock crawlers from the East Coast. Charlie, thank you for coming on board today and talking with us and letting everybody know who you are. So let's get started. Who are you?
First, Rich, thanks. I appreciate the call and being asked to be on it. I told you it's an honor for me. I love rock crawling and all the rock sports and stuff, and I really lived it, and I still do. And to be asked to be a part of this in any way was a really big deal to me. So thank you for doing this and kind of shedding some light on the history of everything that's out there. Certainly, you'll make some of the old guys like me feel good about it. So thank you. I appreciate that. Well,
we need to share the history with everybody that's now enthusiasts that doesn't know the history.
Yeah, it's funny how far it's changed, but I'm sure that'll be something we'll get into in a minute or two about the first time we really met in rock crawling. But I'm a small town guy. I live in Carmel, New York right now. I used to live in Mahopac, New York, which is about 2 minutes away from Carmel. I only moved a couple of minutes down the road and it changed my zip code, but I've only been in my new house that I'm in now, which is not a new house, but a new old house for maybe 10 years. Grew up in my town, the local area here, Carmel, Mahopac. I was born into the marine industry. My mom and dad bought a marina when I was 1. They were originally from down county, down in the Bronx. They moved up here. My dad always had Corvettes and we used to race dragsters and stuff. And when we moved, they brought me up here in a 63 split window, 327 Corvette. So I would lay down in the back of it with, dare I say it, no seatbelts. And I would lay in the back with it next to the luggage and the bags and maybe a blanket. My mom would pop in there, and that's how they would come up to the country. And that's how we started driving around and stuff up there. Was that my parents lived there? They both worked for the phone company. My dad bought the marina on a whim one day. I had a Dodge pickup truck. He was delivering furniture. He pulled up in front of the marina, asked for directions. The guy that he asked for directions was the owner of the marina, and he said to my dad, "Nice truck." My dad, being a forever salesman, said, "Want to buy it?" And the guy said, "Buy my marina and I'll buy your truck." A couple of months later, my parents sold their brand new house they had saved and built and moved into a crappy old marina on the water. My dad knew nothing about the marine industry. He only knew he grew up in the Bronx and City Island. He knew how to scrape bottoms, and he was a wrench. He knew how to work on stuff with all of his friends. He was into those hot rods and stuff. And my life started from that on. 1 year old, I lived above the marina, and I worked there my whole life. Finished high school, stayed at the marina, knew I just always wanted to do that. I don't know if I was right about wanting to do it forever because it's got its ups and downs, but I'm happy it worked out the way it did because it afforded me the ability to do some incredible things, what I was able to be allowed to do, even though it was restricted on timelines because of you guys with rock crawling make it during the summer, which is during the boating season. It's just ridiculous. We should have more winter stuff, but that's a whole nother podcast. But honestly, I had a great time. I learned mechanics and stuff from my grandfather and my father. I went to all the schools for the boating stuff, learned all about it. And then I would say when I was in my young teens, maybe about 13 or 14, I saw Bigfoot, Madison Square Garden, and that was it. I realized that I had to have big tires. And I didn't even know what I was going to do with them, but I had to have big tires. Came home. I bought at 15 years old, going to 16, I bought a 77 half-ton Chevy. proceeded to take a year to get the body somewhat decent at a local body shop. Well, I swept the floors at night and worked, and I cut the fenders and made it fit 35s, and it still had a plow on it so I could make money plowing and stuff. And that first Chevy kind of worked my way into then another one and another one and another one. And I got into the show truck thing, and I was into that crazy chrome everything and 17 shocks on each wheel, 15 stabilizers, and, nothing that was gonna, my trucks always had four-wheel drive, and I would cut and turn the front ends myself so that it would actually work because I did use them. But I got really, really into the show truck thing, and I traveled around and went to a lot of local shows, won a lot of trophies. I was maybe in Boston a little bit, down in the city a couple of times. I did a lot of that. And then I got so tired of polishing and cleaning and then not really using them. And the last truck that I had built was an 85 Chevy, and I made 4-link, and I put airbags underneath it from an 18-wheeler. And it had 2.5 tons in it, and I had 48-inch Terra tires on it. And I built it all in the garage myself. And I took that truck, and I ended up really liking crushing cars. And then we had an old pit by us where everybody would go with the dirt bikes and stuff. So I started going there, and I ended up one day going from driving up the wall of the pit to jumping out of the pit. And I realized real quick that beautiful paint job and all that stuff, and that tilt nose and the blower motor with 2 big carburetors, didn't like landing from 15 feet in the air, and didn't like all the shaking. And so it got a little abused and started to get a little beat up. So I cleaned that up and I sold it, and I got a lot of money for it at the time. I had gotten like $50,000 for it. And it was a huge, huge thing for me when I got the money. And I went ahead and I was going to buy this, I was going to buy that. And instead of doing anything else like that, I started buying trucks to flip, and I would buy old Toyotas and Chevy Blazers, and I was starting to make money flipping them while, doing that at night. And I started working on an old Jeep that I had built for my brother that I had bought that was a pro mud truck. It was a friend of mine and Kenny Bloom. We all knew this guy from over in Connecticut, and it was a 65 or so CJ6. And I bought that, and the frame was broken. It had no motor, and it had 1/2-ton axles. And I kind of redid that. And that was something that was my brother's. And we put 4-wheel steering in it and stuff. But it was kind of almost a show truck, but not that nice. And I kind of bought that, and I made that for off-roading. And I started going to these Jeep events to go 4-wheeling. So instead of just being in the pit and driving through streams and rivers, I started going to not Jeep jamborees, but these trail fests they had, where 35s were a big top thing, and you would pull in and they would check you to make sure you had lockers and your winch worked, and you have seat belts. You had to have safety checks in order to hit their hard trails. And I went first to those trails. I got, people laughed like my truck wasn't going to work or wasn't going to go anywhere or do anything, but it was really well set up. I had ended up putting 513s in it, Detroit lockers. It had 4-wheel steering, but I'm using the tractor piston back then. And if a piece of 3/16 steel broke, I went to 1/2 inch. It was like I just kept making it heavier, bigger, heavier, bigger, heavier, bigger. And we kept 4-wheeling in it, and we ended up in the snow, and we ended up in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, all over 4-wheeling it. And I just had the best time. And I took an old trailer and fixed that up and started using that to tow it behind my 1-ton. I had a single wheel 1-ton pickup that I had fixed up, and I was towing all around, and we were really having fun. And back in the day, the only real big competition before rock crawling was Top Truck Challenge. And I said, you know what? Let's enter Top Truck Challenge. So a buddy of mine who owns an off-road shop, who back in the day didn't own one yet. He used to own what was called JD's Off-Road. My good friend Jim Daly, his new company, it's just basically the same company, just a new name, was called EVB out of Connecticut, Extreme Vehicle Builders. We entered Top Truck Challenge, and we took a picture of the truck outside my house in a rock pile that I had a bunch of rocks dropped off years ago so I could just drive up and down them. And I lived in this little piece of property, and we had an old toy Spider-Man zip tied to the hood of it and the grill. And it was a big, tall Spider-Man that was on there. Everybody would say it was like the Spider-Man truck, and I had double shackles and airbags and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'd done all this work to it, and I took the picture and we sent it in with a description. And lo and behold, we got picked to go to Top Truck Challenge. And this was, I guess, late 98, going into 99 when the applications were going in 1999. And I said, all right, now what do we do? We were in New York. The damn thing was in California. We had no clue on what are you going to do, and nothing to expect. Rock crawling for us was nothing like what we do now. We used some rocks. We were more, I don't want to say mud, but big hill climbs and, climbing through ditches and out of things. And I had a 12,000 pound winch on the front, a 10,000 pound winch on the back. I carried, oil, cap, rotor, spark plugs, grease, gasoline, water. I had almost a spare truck in the back of the Jeep and a 44-inch tire in there. I ran 44-inch boggers. So we put together a plan to take his leased pickup truck. He had a lease on a brand new Dodge pickup with a V10 in it. And I had a good friend who was helping me set up today for the podcast, Chris Graham, and another fella, that were going to drive it to California for that first competition. So I laughed. I said, all right, this is a great plan. I'll fly out. We'll meet you there. You'll pick us up at the airport. We'll compete because, once again, it was summertime. So this young Chris Graham, still a good friend of mine, him and this other friend, they get in the truck with the V10 in it. And we had figured out, my friend Jim, fuel economy and how long it was going to take and how many days and all that. And we got them set up with all the stuff and 52 straps on the truck holding it down and all the things. And they left, and they called us from maybe Indiana and said, we're out of money. We need more money. We have no more money for gasoline, and we're out. And we said, well, that was supposed to be enough to go to California and back. And they said, well, the V10's only getting about 2.5 miles to the gallon right now. So it was telling my truck must have been 7,000 or 8,000 pounds. My trailer that I had fixed up to use at the time was heavy. So we figured out how to get them more money and hustled around and got some money into an account for them. And they left Indiana and kept going. And thank God they did a great job. Safely traveled across the country, towed the truck. And then the funny stories are, when they went to come get us from the airport, they couldn't bring the truck into the airport. So they stopped out in the front of a hotel, and they took the truck and the trailer, and they put it on the side of the road by a lamp pole. And Chris said, well, I don't want anybody to steal it. It's California, right? So they took the winch, the 12,000 pound winch, and they went around a light pole a couple of times and went back to the trailer and then tightened it up. And they did the same thing in the back. So here's my truck where they go to get me from the airport, me and Jim, and they bring us back. And here we are. It's on the side of a road on a hill, blocked, chopped, but the winches are holding it to light poles strapped in place. Why nobody came and tried to cut the cables and tow it or whatever is beyond me. But long story short, we went to Top Truck Challenge. We had an incredible time. We traveled real far. I was there with matter of fact, a couple of the guys I keep in touch with now and then. I talk to them from them, but that was 1999. And I think we finished 4th place, which I was happy with. I would have liked to have won it, but for being new and everything we had going on, it was pretty interesting. So it was a cool thing to do. Came home from there, and I had the bug real bad to do more and be more competitive. And when we were out there, we saw the Scorpion. Heath Biggs.
Sonny Honager.
So Sonny, the first one he built for Heath Biggs. Heath was there as a judge because he had won the year before.
All right.
Maybe it might have been a year or two before, but Heath was there, and I was amazed by looking at the Scorpion. And I spent a lot of time just looking at the idea of there's nothing there. Now my Jeep that we had came with, I had built a 2x4 box frame and a roll cage, and I did the whole thing, but I realized it was big, it was heavy, and I wanted something else. So we came home, and we were working on a truck for Chris Graham as well, building him a big truck with 44s and coilovers. And I started to build a new truck, and we took the Jeep apart. And I realized I had to have coilovers. That's what all the cool kids had out in California. I was going to get coilovers. Even though I didn't know what I was doing with them, I was getting them. I reached out to Steve Ramori from Avalanche Engineering, talked to him a little bit about coilovers. I bought some coilovers from him, and he helped me out a bunch. And I started to build what was really the first, I believe, and I don't know anybody else that'll say this, the first full tube chassis buggy on the East Coast was my 4-seat Crusher. And we called it the Crusher. It was huge. It was 4 seats, real wide. I sat next to the transmission down low. I had big coilovers on it, Dana 60s, 4-wheel steering. And that truck really got me going. We did a bunch of rock crawling competitions with it. When we left California from Top Truck in 99, I came home and I built that new truck. We started going to Paragon Adventure Park all the time. Kyle became one of my best friends, and I ended up going to Paragon Adventure Park all the time, constantly conquering and doing more with it. And then I got into that Ramsey Off-Road Challenge, and I had a lot of fun doing that and running that with Sam from Sam's Off-Road, and it was just a bunch of great, it was friends that I'll have, God willing, for the rest of my life, and theirs will be friends forever, like with us. And my four-seater was a lot of fun, and I did a lot of cool things. And then the internet, Pirate, the best and the scariest thing that was out there was Pirate 4x4. I remember being on Pirate a couple times with looking, and I was not good. We had web TV in my house, my house back then. And we got on Pirate, and they were talking about these rock crawling events. And the first one, I believe, was 99. It was in Las Cruces, New Mexico, I think. And I remember watching, and then I bought the videos that went with it. And then I found out that there was going to be a rock crawling event in Johnson Valley in February of 2001. I said, I'm there. And we finished Chris Graham's truck. We finished my truck. They capped the tire size for Unlimited at 39.5s. So I had 44s. So I had to buy 5 brand new tires. We loaded everything up onto a big gooseneck trailer. And Chris and I left New York with I had a 2001. It was a brand new, maybe had 1,000 miles on it. I bought a Duramax diesel. I had got the inside scoop that they were coming out with it from Ben Stewart, who used to work for Four Wheeler. Back in the day, he was a nice guy. I talked to him a bunch. I ordered a Duramax diesel, a 4-door short bed. That came in. I put about 1,000 miles on it. I put a gooseneck hitch in the back of it. Bought a big, probably a 40-foot long open deck trailer. Headed to California. No idea what I was doing. Showed up at a U-Rock event in 2001. Petrified. I looked at the mountain and I said, where is the trail? I had no clue. I unloaded my truck and started driving to the mountain to try to see where to go four-wheeling. I was there a day or two before to try to get a lay of the land. And I pull up, and I'm in Cougar Buttes is where we went in, right by Johnson Valley. And I pulled in, we unload the trucks, and I look up on the mountain, and I can see in the distance a bright red truck, and I can see a blue and silver truck, and maybe a gray truck or something. So I drive towards them thinking I'm going to follow those guys into the trail. I'm from New York. I have no idea where I'm going. I'm Charlie Melchner. I'm going to go where I want. And I drive in, and I can't figure out how they got on the trail. And I look up, and I see on the trail this guy, and I said to him, and he goes, oh, you come in down there. He yells down to me. And I looked, and I said, these were massive boulders. He wanted me to drive in this thing. I said, that's not a trail. That was one of the Hammers trails, right? So I had no idea. So I drove in, I caught up to him, and it was Chris Durham and John Curry.
Nice.
Those were the guys who were in front of me. They held my hand for about 20 minutes or so. We got up a little further, and Chris was following me. We got up. They branched off and said, we're going to turn around and go back. But, of course, I was from New York, smarter than everybody else. They said, oh, we're going to keep going. They said, oh, it's getting dark. Probably should head back down. Got lights and dark. I'll be fine, right? So we branched off. Oh, it got good, Rich. We drove up to the top of the mountain. We took some amazing sunset pictures. The temperature dropped about 50 degrees. Got real cold. Got down the bottom of the mountain. We pull out. I got no idea where I am. I'm lost. Chris's truck, his alternator starts going bad. So now I'm towing him through the desert. Finally, it must have taken 2 hours, 3 hours. It's 1 a.m. Somehow or another, we leave Chris's truck in the desert with the hazards on, hoping we could come back and find it later. And I just start driving around haphazardly, circles, and everything tells you not to do. That's what I did out there. I was a typical New Yorker riding around in the desert, big tires. I knew how to weld and fix stuff. So what could go wrong, right? Finally, 1 o'clock in the morning, we find the pickup truck somehow. We load my truck up. I proceed to try to go out to find Chris's truck and drive him down the pea gravel of the road. And I pull off to the left, and I bury my truck, the tow rig, in the sand, sink it all the way down. Now, what I left out of the story was when I was towing Chris, my transmission was getting hot, and it melted my shift cable, so I only had forward gears. So when I loaded the big truck on the trailer, I loaded it up and put it on, and now it's stuck up there, and my pickup is stuck. And now off in the distance, we can see Chris's truck, and we realize I know where it is now to get it. So I have to drive off of a 40-something foot deck over trailer, triple axle. I drove my four-seater off of it sideways. I don't know how we didn't roll it over right there and have everything wrecked. Managed to go tow Chris back, towed everything on the trailer, went back to the hotel. That was my first time in the Hammers. It was a wonderful experience. Freezing cold, didn't have any food, no water, none of that. Almost ran out of gas, melted my shifter cable, alternator. But that experience brought me to Ace Alternator. So I met the great guys over there where they did Chris's alternator, did some work for us. And I got to meet Chris Durham. which was a big deal that I met Chris and John Curry. He was very nice to me. And we went through, got the rigs back set up, went on to the ARCA event, and scared to death. And another lucky thing for me, in my lineup, my course, and that back then, I think we had I think when I look at the sheet, I think it's 140 people were competing over 2 days. I pulled up to get in the lineup, and the guy in front of me was Johnny G. That man said, "Calm down, don't worry," because I had no idea. And back then he had his white Avalanche Engineering CJ looking buggy, the red chassis on it and everything else. And that was half the size of my big, huge 4-seater. But he held my hand and said, "Do this and do that." And, and he talked me through it, which he was a gentleman. And I'll never forget that to this day. He was just a great person to help me through my first event. I think I finished 35 or 34th out of there. I don't remember exactly, but I finished the event and did, in my opinion, it was great for driving from New York to there, smaller tires, all the different things. It was on the internet, it was a big deal. I had pictures all over the place. And that was my really, the first big event I went to was out there. And that was a great experience for me. I learned a lot. And I realized at that point, I came home and I went on to, like I said, I did the Ramsey Off-Road Challenge and I did a few other things, but I knew in order to be more competitive, I had to build another truck. So that's how that part, that I cover enough of it there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now Crusher, was that the one that you competed at in the first New Rock event in Paragon?
So the first event where I met you when you came up and set everything up, I had my 2-seater I had built because I came home from California and my 4-seater was big and I had sold it. Somebody had bought that from me. And I went on and I built a full tube chassis 2-seater. I took a boat motor, a Turbo 400. I got an Atlas. At this point, I had met Tom Woods a few months early. I met him in Johnson Valley. And Tom and I we really, really got along well. And Tom was at the first event with us. I'm sure you remember. He was there fixing drive shafts and doing stuff at the first East Coast event that you had there at Paragon. So when I had that new truck, I built this, I got a set of, Tom had a friend from Germany, who was using Unimog axles and putting them in trucks. So this fella said, "Let me set you up with my brakes and my parts that I'm using and put them on some Unimog axles." So I bought some Unimog axles. What could go wrong, right? I know how to weld and, if I can measure with a yardstick, mark with a crayon, cut it with a torch, how bad could it be, right? I got Unimog axles and I got the parts and pieces and I built a 2-seater with a V8 and an Atlas and a Turbo 400 and Unimog axles and 44-inch tires with Hummer wheels and 4-wheel steering. And I loved it. That was called the Rock Crusher. We called it because it was my Rock Series one. So that's the truck I had when I met you. I had went to, I'm trying to think. No, it had 44s on it when I met you with it. That's what I had. I had 44-inch tires on it. And I had boggers on the back and TSLs on the front because, the TSLs steer better than the boggers. So you got to do that. And you got to cut them a certain way. I'm still a super swamper guy. Through all the different tires and stuff. Crazy. They'll never work in the Rock Switch, just so you know. They'll never work. I had a nickel for every time I heard that. But anyway, that first event, I had the 2-seater there. And that was where I met you. And I think we had Kyle LeDuc was there, or Kurt. One of them, the father, right? He was there driving Matt from AGR's truck.
Yep. Bob Rogie came out with me. Yep,
that's right. And then we had somebody had a Scorpion buggy there. I don't remember who the guy was, but remember he had that tan Scorpion. Yep. So there was a Scorpion there. And
I don't remember that guy's name.
I don't either.
Bob probably would remember. And then that was a New Rock event that Bob and I came out to help Big Kyle and Little Kyle put on their first event.
Yeah, that's right. It was you and Bob Hazel, right?
No, me and Bob Rogie.
Oh, that's right. It was. Yeah. Bob Hazel didn't come till he did Sports in the Rough down there. I remember that now. Yeah.
And then also Vic Carroll from
Advanced Adapters
was out there.
Once again, a guy that I see him, anywhere I see him, he was another one. What a gentleman and an ambassador to our sport. Just a great guy.
Yep. And I can remember that event. Bob and I went out wheeling with Kyle, and Kyle had, I don't know, a CJ7 or something like that with only a B-pillar cage. Bob is like, "Well, I can't drop off these rocks, and Kyle goes, "Well, I'll drive it. You just spot me." And so we're spotting them off ledges. And there's one of the things that little Kyle looked at Bob and said, "So what do you think of our rocks?" And Bob goes, "They're great rocks. Too bad you guys drive around them." Because all the trails were around the rocks instead of over the top.
You got to remember, 35s were big back then, and you couldn't have Detroit's front and rear because you couldn't steer, you know.
Yep. No, and it was just a different thing because, you know, there was a difference in timing on the West Coast than on the East Coast.
Yep.
Or even in the middle of the country. Because we found that later when we came here to Mason, Texas, where I'm at right now, to Katemsi Rocks. We had the same issue where guys were, you know, that was a great set of rocks, but when they looked at our courses, they were like, you know, "Holy shit, what are you guys trying to do? Kill us?" You know, and you can remember that first event at the drivers' meeting, everybody, especially Sunday morning, after they'd done one day of competition, they were like, you know, "You guys are trying to kill us. You're trying to make us look bad." I remember Vic was in the restaurant at the hotel on Saturday night, or maybe it was Friday night after people had walked the courses, and they said, they were saying, you know, the guys were talking like that, and Vic looked at him and said, "Well, you know, I've been to West Coast events, and this is the first East Coast event I've been to, and, you know, they set up the same kind of courses on the West.
Yeah.
You know, they're not doing anything different to you guys than what they do for others."
Yep.
And then at the drivers' meeting, you know, you said the same thing because everybody was still grumbling.
I remember, Rich, when you pointed me out there and you said, "Charlie, something else." And I said, "Rich, if you put cones on it, I'll try it." I said, that's what I said right there in front of it. I said, "You put cones on it and I'll try it." And then you said something about you had a couple of cones even back then that were different colors for bonuses. And you're like, "What out there?" And I said, "I can't promise all those, but I'll do my best." But I remember that.
Yep. And it was, you know, it wasn't a shock to me, but it was eye-opening to the fact that, you know, there was different things going on in different parts of the country, you know, what people were used to doing, you know, with Kyle running the park and not even having a full cage, you know, and going out there and opening up trails and, you know, doing recoveries or whatever he needed to do and didn't even have a full cage. And I mean, it was just a bolt into the floorboards.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, and I was like, "Dude, you know, you got to have a cage on this thing and tie it in." You know, it was really cool, and we helped get that started. But, you know, I want to say, I probably said this to you anyway, but I want to say thank you for stepping up in that drivers meeting and reassuring everybody that we weren't there just to screw with the East Coasters. You know, that's because they were all, I mean, everybody there was the first competition for almost everybody.
Yeah, there was quite a few people that were upset that they could get scratched or they might tip over or something might happen. Yeah.
And then there was the guy in the Quigley van.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I was like, they just bring it, you know. And I'm looking at this van going, "Dude, at least you have a cage wrapped around that driver's seat," because that thing was gonna get the piss beat out of it. That's all there was.
At the end of that year, that didn't have a straight panel left on it, that van. It got dragged through more stuff. I think they cut the back off of it at the end of it or something. It got so bad. Talk about a commitment, though. I mean, that thing was I think it was brand new, right?
Yeah, it was. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, they had just finished it, you know, that within a week or two of the event.
They're a big conversion company out of PA. They do stuff all across the country. Quigley Motorsports or Quigley 4x4, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them in dealerships even, you know, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, from that first event that you did at New Rock where we met, and you'd already been doing some of the ARCA events, what went on from there? How much longer did you continue competing?
Well, I competed, I don't even know what year I stopped. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, it had to have been 2006 or 7, somewhere around there. I ran King of the Hammers in 2010 by accident. Let's put it that way. I'll tell you how that happened. But it wasn't meant. It just kind of happened. You know, of course I was addicted to it and I had to do it. I wanted to. At that same time when New Rock was going on, I think it was right before that where Jellicoe was happening. Daryl and Rusty Bray and Ken Chute, Chris Durham, everybody was doing that event down there. And it was E-Rock was what it was, I think was the name of it.
Yep.
And I remember there was some talk about that event because it had happened right before. And there was a series that first year, maybe 3 events or something happened down there. And then there was a lot of talk about it because we had this stuff happening in Pennsylvania. So of course I had to go to Tennessee, right? I had to go to Jellicoe. I mean, you're going to go Rockcrawler, you got to go down there. And I already knew one of the guys. He was in California with me, so he could go to California and come back. I could, and I heard there was guys down there that were really great. So I didn't want to just go against anybody. I wanted to go against the guys that were really good. So we figured out again how to get to Tennessee, and Jellicoe is like 3 hotels, 2 restaurants, and they all share a bathroom. It's like a tiny little right. We went down there, and I think the first event, I asked Kyle to be my spotter then. I said, Kyle, why don't we do it together? We'll put Paragon stickers on the truck and New Rock stickers, and we'll go down there. So we went down with my 2-seater. We went down to the first event, and right before that event, I had done an event at Badlands. I think I went to with my 2-seater with the 44s on it. And this was before sticky tires. There were no stickies, and there were no crawlers. Tom Woods and Vic had said to me somewhere after we had talked and in between that BF Goodrich was coming out with a special tire for Rockcrawler, and I need to have it. I call BF Goodrich Jackson Dawson Motorsports, and we think they say to some guy from New York that wants a set of the tires. They're like, yeah, we'll let you know. Click, right? I can't get them, right? I'll run my Super Swampers, but there's supposed to be some unobtainium magic tire that they're going to be testing out, right? So I go to Badlands. I miss Troy. He was one of my fiercest competitors and one of the nicest men I ever met, and some of my best memories in my life of learning about being a man and learning about everything that goes on. He was one of those gentlemen that I just had a great time with him, and I miss him. I wish everybody got a chance to meet Troy because he was just a different breed. And if you knew him and you got to spend some time with him, you learned a lot about life from him. He was just an incredible guy. It's a shame that he got taken away from us. But when I went out there to that first event, I climbed a big hill for back in the day, that in the first obstacle. And when I finished the obstacle, I came through, and that first day I was in top 3, which was normal. I was never winning all the time. I did good. I was competitive, but I was always changing and trying something. Well, after I finished the first couple of obstacles, a guy came over to me, and he walked over and he said, hey, I think you need some better tires on your truck. And I said, yeah. I said, I heard about these new BF Goodrich tires. I said, but I can't even get them. I said, I know. I heard that everybody's, it's going to be the new thing. So he said, he said, today's your lucky day. He said, I'm Frank D'Angelo from Jackson Dawson Motorsports. He said, you did a great job. He said, not only do you have a big mouth and you had a lot to say and everybody loved you and you had fun, he said, but you did a great job driving. He said, I'll get you a set of tires out to test. You can't give them to anybody else. We're going to share them with Tracy Jordan, Jason Pauly, Ken Chute. Chris Durham was on Goodyears back then for the longest time. Myself, and maybe Kenny Bloom. I don't remember who the others, but there was only about 5 or 6 sets. So they were going to send them to us, and we were going to share them. We were going to use them a little bit and then send them on to somebody else. That's how it worked. So I called them up and said, I have an event going on. There was another New Rock event going on, and it was like 2 weeks later. So he said, I'll get you the tires out right away. So I was like, awesome. So he said, here's the specs on the tires so you know what to do. And they were 17-inch. 17-inch? That's like a race car, right, Rich? I mean, what are we going on a road track? 17-inch rim. You're 16.5. Come on, buddy. That's what we use, 16.5 or 15-inch. You can't have a 17-inch. Nobody's going to buy a 17-inch rim. Nobody even makes a 17-inch rim, right? Let alone a beadlock, Rich, right? Who would do that? It's insane that you're going to put a 17-inch rim out there. That's just never going to work. I laughed. I said, okay. They said they're going to send me 5 tires. And I started calling around to try to get rims. Nobody had 17-inch beadlock rims. I called back and I said, guys, I want to run the tires. I want to run them. I said, but I don't have 17-inch wheels. So Frank said, give me 5 minutes. He calls me back and he says, call this number, ask for Greg, tell I already talked to him, give him your address. I called back up. I had spoke to this guy once before, and he said, okay, what's the address? What's the back spacing? What's the bolt pattern? Yep, we'll build them and have them out to you this week. I went, wow, that's called knowing people right there. That was Greg Mulkey from Raceline.
Yep.
That was my first set of beadlock wheels. I didn't get them for free. I bought them, but I didn't mind that at all. I was nobody, and I still kind of am nobody. I just like rock crawling. But the tires and wheels came in, and they were only 37s. So I went from 44s to 37s. So the next event at Paragon, everybody kind of laughed. You know, you got these little tiny pizza cutters on there. What are you going to do with those tires? You know, blah, blah, blah. And they were sticky.
And
so
you
it was,
spanked them.
Oh my God. And I had already, I had a V8, I had portals, I had four-wheel steering. So I was already stacking the deck in my favor because I knew I wanted all that cool shit and I could weld and build. So I was putting it together. I put those 37s on. I won that event. Did great. Tires were incredible. They were small, but with the portal axles with the 37s, I was still so far above everybody else. They ended up giving me those tires and saying, keep them, just stay with them. And I went down to E-Rock then. That was the week after that, to that very first E-Rock event. And when I went down to that event, I had the 37s on, and that's where I met Ken Chute. And I met Chris again and Rusty Bray. I can't even remember all the great, I met so many great people down there. And that was something that, if I tell people all the time, I have never been to a rock crawling event that was anything like Jellicoe was in its heyday. Carloads, and you'd walk through the crowd after an obstacle and signed autographs. The people were just, it was just the timing, the place, the people. We were rock stars at that time. It was, and meanwhile, I had a T-shirt with an iron-on BF Goodrich thing on the side of it, so that was how you had to have the BF Goodrich thing on the on it. I ran that event. I finished third, so I aggravated some of the guys down there, but also made them go, all right, the kid from New York is learning, so he's doing all right. Left there, kept working on the truck, doing stuff, kept rock crawling. Then the rumors were going that there was going to be a 40-inch tire. I got one of the very first sets of a 39-inch tire. I want to talk at it,
39.5.
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble with the period correct historians about this. So they were going to have this tire 39.5 inches tall, and they sent me some of them. When I said they sent me some, they gave me a sponsorship. And it was paying for this. I had to wear a hat and the shirt. But when I read the sponsorship thing, it said 50. And I said, 50 tires, Rich. I went, what? I went, 50? What am I going to, my 44-inch boggers lasted me 5 years. And I'm like, they were on my yellow Jeep before that. I'm like, what am I going to do with 50 tires? Well, I called Frank D'Angelo. I said, what do you, he said, you got to have plenty. And we don't want you to worry about having any problems at all. And we want you to know that if you got to heat them up or you have a problem, you cut one or you do this. I don't think he said cut one. I probably just made that up. He didn't say that. He said, if you have an issue with a tire, he said, we want you to have new ones on hand for whenever you need it. You learn as you go along what they're doing and how it works. And when that happened, Ramsey Winch back in the day, they gave me a whole bunch of winches, 15, 20 winches, and said, put them on your truck. I can't put 20 winches on your truck, but that was my sponsorship, And I went out and I ran the first set of East Coast 40-inch crawlers. And I used those and I did well, had a great time with them, ran a bunch of events, went all over the place. But again, knowing what I knew that I needed to step up again. John Bundren had come out with Tiny. I had seen Tiny out there in different places and it was mind-blowing. We all know the first time you saw it was one of those, how could tiny little steel pieces, it's made out of the right material, the thickness, the braking strength, the hind joint, the bolt, hollow bolts, aluminum parts, things that we would never do, lead pieces mounted to the front axle for weight, water in the tires. It still amazes me that people say, you put water in your tires? Why do you do that? I'm like, how do you four-wheel without water in your tires? I tried it for a couple of years. It's no fun. You need water in your tires. We built, I sold that 2-seater then. And I went and built a single-seater. And I did the same thing. I built a 2x4 frame, and I put a 4.3 V6. And this time, I had 9-inch center sections with Unimog portals on the ends of it with disc brakes. I had, Rich, one of the things I should say is I've been lucky enough that as I built stuff, my talent has always stayed right about the same level. Maybe got up a little bit, but never to what these guys are that are building now. They are talent. Like I remember the first time I met Jesse Haynes and his Willies at Paragon. Kyle and I talked about him afterwards. We knew he was going to do something we watched him stuck in a spot and I could see he understood what the truck, he wasn't just driving the tire under the rock and breaking it. He was learning what to do to get the tire, to come out. Like he understood, which, you watch people, they either understand what the truck is doing, when to front dig, so the front pulls and settles, when to be ready for reverse or not. And I was able to drive, and my building was always, measure it with a yardstick, mark it with a crayon, cut it with a torch. That was it. If you needed a hole bigger than what was in my drill bits, we cut the hole with the torch, and I used the die grinder to clean it out the rest of the way that it needed to be. No finesse. Need it to be stronger, you make it bigger. All right? That's just what I did. But I was lucky enough to meet some very, very talented people through the years that got relationships where they built stuff for me. So I built this single-seater, and I went out west with it, and I ran a bunch of events out west, and I ran a bunch of stuff back here. And it was good. It worked well. It wasn't the best, but it was a single-seater, and I enjoyed it. Could have done a lot of things different. I didn't understand link geometry right and spring setup, but I didn't want to know it. I just kind of threw it together and wung it, and it had worked for me in the past. It didn't work that great on that one, but I got through the season and did a bunch of stuff, and I still prided myself on going to all the events, and I was still getting exposure for all the right people and all the right things. While that was going on, Tiny had come out. John Bunder had come out with Nelson, and Nelson built Tiny. And I looked at that and went, well, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, there we go. That's it. That's it. Shannon had built the LS single seat rear seater. That was, was a lot of horsepower, and he jumped up on things and did stuff, but it didn't have a lot of finesse to it. There was a few different cars out there, and then he built, I wheeled with Mitch Guthrie and with Cody Wagoneer when they had their Campbell cars with the Ecotechs in the back. And I was wheeling with my car with the V6 in the front of it. And I said, I need the Ecotech. That's what I need. I couldn't afford that Volkswagen motor. It was ridiculous. I mean, that was insane. I mean, now I would say you got to have it if you're going to do that. But I guess it would beg to differ when you look at what Jesse's building and some of these other guys are doing. I mean, they don't need it. But I came back, and while I was at Paragon, I had met a bunch of great people, but I had met this one guy that everybody kept saying he could make anything. And his name was Dave Kemner. And he owned a little off-road shop behind his house. And he was one of the most low-spoken, very calm, just a brilliant, brilliant man. I haven't talked to him, and I don't even know how long. I left years and years ago and got out of the sport, and when the economy crashed and everything was happening, and I kind of changed gears, and I was four-wheeling very little, but still a little bit, and I kind of lost track of him. But Dave Kemner was looking to get more into off-road stuff. So when I met him, I said, we had talked, and he had said to me, what would you build? And I said, well, I would build a rear engine car now, and I would do this. And he said, well, let's build it together. And I said, okay. And I had been real lucky at this point now. B.F. Goodrich had sponsored me. Ramsey Winch had sponsored me. Bill Steen Shocks had sponsored me. Advanced Adapters had sponsored me. Raceline had sponsored me. Tom Woods was my biggest, my friend. Like, Tom would come up and spend 2 weeks in New York and stay at my house. I would stay at Tom's house all the time in Utah. I mean, we just got along really great. And I met Tom through Jack Bettio from New Jersey, who I'm still very close with. We spent all this time, and Tom was always telling me to go with this person, that person, do this, do that. And when I went to go build this car with Dave, we had talked about what we needed. And of course I needed an Ecotech with a turbo on it. And the only place that a guy from New York knew where to get one of those motors was Turnkey Engine Supply. And, call out to Turnkey Engine Supply, and you go from New York, what can you do for me on an engine? And they look in their, I'm going to say their book. I don't even think it was on the internet then. And they just say, this is the list price, and that's it. So it took a little bit of work. I got them to sponsor me, and I got an engine from them. And then I got a Hughes transmission and another Atlas, and we had at it. And Dave and I sat down and did what we thought would be the best with trying to move the seating and the engine to try to get it a little further forward. And one of the things that I was lucky with, I wanted rear steer. I've had rear steer in a truck since 1986 or 87. I've either had it in one of my big pickup trucks or my off-roaders. I've always had rear steer. We started building with all these parts coming in, and I had I always used to say to people, just the parts pile alone was enough for an off-road shop to look impressive. Even if they got it in where it looked good, that was a bonus. But just the pile of parts that he had in the corner, that engine with the turbo and that shiny transmission, the brand new Atlas and aluminum center sections, and it looked impressive. Those wheels, those tires. I mean, you had all the stuff. While I was doing that stuff, I had met Walker Evans. I forgot. I went to the Chile Challenge on the way home from the ARCA event because I drove across the country. We had to try to find something to do. So when I went to the Chile Challenge, I met Walker Evans, and I met Chip Monk back then, and he had just gotten his Scorpion with the diesel in it.
Right.
And I went wheeling with those guys for a couple of days, and that was they wheeled good stuff. It wasn't incredibly hard, but Walker used me as the dig on the other guys all the time. So if they couldn't climb something, and then I did, Walker would go, so the kid from New York in the home-built 30-day buggy just climbed that hill, and you're in a $150,000 thing, all special, and you can't climb it? He was making fun of everybody back then. So
That's Walker.
He broke balls in the most classy way there was to everybody out there, and he never said, I'm Walker Evans and I can climb that and I could do this or I could do that. He always used someone else. He said, look what they're doing. Look what that one's doing. Why don't you do that? And look at all that money you spent there and you can't do that. So he kind of was, I end up sitting on a rock, and I think about it now, and I'm on the side of a ledge sitting with him. He's got his arm around me, let me tell you something, kid, and look, and when you do this, look a little bit more at this, like just things that why he did it. He was just still is a great guy. You know what I mean? But that relationship with him and everybody else I knew, there was talk of me building this car, was building those Walker Evans air shocks that were so lightweight and everything else. And I already had Bilstein was sponsoring me, but Walker said to me, I'm building something new. You want a set of them for your car? And does anybody say no to Walker Evans?
Correct.
Yeah. So I said, yes, please. I will take them. So he sent me these ones. And this was back, Rich, that we didn't have the regular, so it had a Schrader valve on it, but when it had the bladder in it where you had to put the oil in with a needle and take the oil out of it with an actual syringe. It was a little crazy. But that's how they did stuff, very precise. So anyway, I got all these great parts, and then I built this moon buggy with Dave, and we broke it a few times. And Dave was one of those guys that knew so much that he was building lighter pieces and parts, pushing the envelope. He worked on airplanes, and he knew he could TIG weld anything. And he understood everything really, really well. He had a great mind. And when he zoned in on something, he could, whatever that was, he could figure it out. I don't think there's anything that man couldn't do. He was really that talented. And I'm sure to this day, he's even more talented than ever. He was just a sponge for knowledge and to figure things out. So we built this cool the first rear steer moon buggy, which was real cool. Brought it out to the Supercrawl. We finished it 4 or 5 days before we had to be in like Salt Lake City. And I had my single seater still that I was putting aside to sell. And then we went to Paragon to test the moon buggy the night before we were leaving. We had just gotten it running, and it was steering, and the brakes were working, and all back together. And do you remember the big wall at Paragon?
Yep.
It was so famous. So there was one side of it to the right that nobody, even Randy Torbett, who was the hill climber back there, and another great guy that I met, his whole group. We just had so much fun together, taught everybody a lot, taught us all how important it was to steer 50 degrees. Nobody knew before Randy until he flipped over and he turned the wheel to the left and drove back on his wheels. We went, "What? That's magic. It's magic. How do we do that?" We went out in the dark and we parked my tow rig and a couple of Jeeps, and Kyle and I, we all parked the bottom of that hill, and I started trying to climb the hill. And we realized I needed water in the front tires. So we filled the front tires. Now it's probably 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I went to the far right where nobody had ever climbed. And I was starting to get almost all the way up it. I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I did. I went for it hard. And I shifted. I held the brake on, and I put it in second gear, and I let go of the handbrake, and it jumped up on the wall, and it wheelied. And it wheelied till the back tires drove past the front tires, and it kicked me right off the wall. I landed flat on the roof, and then went to the wheels, and then went to the roof, and then went to the wheels, and back to the roof to the wheels. So I went 2 times to the roof, and I landed on the coal road in the bottom on the wheels sitting down there. And everybody comes running over, and there was everybody who was helping me get ready, and it's 1, 2 in the morning. The buggy's not running. And we look, hope nothing's wrong. And as we start to look, we realize the motor plate that Dave built that held the Ecotech in place was all there, but the bossed part on the motor, all the pieces where the screws in, the engine actually cracked and the motor fell down. And when it fell down, it broke the power steering pump off, and I fucked it up, the night before we were leaving to go to Supercrawl, because I had to try to climb that spot, which was a lot of times was either checkers or wreckers for me. I did that a few times. I've smartened up a little bit since then, but I tried. So I left, and we pushed the truck and the trailer. I was exhausted. We had spent a week of nonstop battling to get ready to go to Supercrawl with this new truck. I said, forget it. We'll leave it at Dave's garage. We'll take the single seater. Let's get on the road. We only had, we had 2 days now to get there. We went back to the garage, and it was my brother-in-law, my good friend Ricky that worked for me for years and years, and a couple other guys. I went into the back of the pickup truck and said, I'm going to go to sleep because I'm going to drive the first leg tomorrow. I said, if you guys could just drag the broken shit out, put the little buggy in, and when I wake up in the morning, we'll go and you guys can sleep. I'll drive the first shift. While I was sleeping, they dragged the moon buggy inside, and Dave, and through the middle of the night, welded the engine block back together and made a piece that fit on it to hold it, put the engine back together. And then the power steering pump had actually cracked and broken off the fitting out of it. He took the pump apart, ground it down, cleaned it, and welded it back together, and welded in the AN fitting that used to thread in, and actually welded the power steering pump back together. So needless to say, when I woke up in the morning, the car was all fixed.
Wow.
So they did it. They must have stayed up, till 6 a.m. Matter of fact, I'm sure they did, because I woke up and they were inside showering and stuff, like they were getting ready, like they were finishing up for the night. So we loaded up, and I had a 53-foot enclosed trailer, and I had my pickup truck, and we headed out cross country, not knowing any more than it started. It had fluids in it again, and it'll take a real good shot to the roof a couple of times because I did it. And we got out to Supercrawl. And, in the first moon buggy, you're sitting sideways in the seat. We did that, we copied what everybody else did. That worked. Obviously, there's a reason why you do that. So I'm not ashamed to say it. We tried to better it a little bit, but we copied that idea. And we pulled in, and all the fanfare and the pictures, and it was great. And I went out to the first obstacle, and I drove through a nice little snaked part, which was perfect for my truck. And then there was a breakover, and it was maybe 3 foot tall. So normally I'd just drive over the breakover. The winch would go out, the front tires would go down, drag you over. I went over, the front tires dropped out. I turned to get lined up for the next cone. I gave it some gas, and I heard kink, and all of a sudden transmission fluid started pouring out in the front. The front drive shaft bound up because of the droop. It made it at full droop, but the traction, when it pulled the tires down and the body was up in the air, it was enough that it hit. And when it hit, it actually cracked the transmission.
Wow.
So there's the first obstacle. So we get out there, we go back to the gravel parking lot, and what do? We start pulling the transmission, and everybody's saying, Charlie's transmission is broke. So somebody has another power glide. So Rich, we take the broken transmission out, and we put the whole thing back in, covered in oil, back in the last obstacle of the day. We go ahead and we go to pull out. There's no second gear in the transmission. Only has first gear. Now, the guy had no idea. He was just doing me a favor. We went back out, couldn't even do the first obstacle. Second was gone, and first was losing as we were moving, even with fluid in it. It was just whatever it was. That night, Chris Durham, Rusty Bray, Brian, that used to own Anarchy Off-Road.
Yep.
He was in a bad accident and stuff. He was another guy that was really good to me. We went to his shop in the middle of the night, and we tore the transmission out, took the other one, and Rusty Bray stayed and Chris stayed. And out of those 2 broken transmissions, they made one transmission. And then we put it back in, stayed up, like I said, all night. Went the next day, had a great day. Finished, I don't know, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I'm sure top 20, 30, whatever it was, for a brand new car, and was really excited on what we did. But I went to that, and I'd been to a couple of Supercrawls, so it was a good time when I had done it. But that was the moon buggy. And then from then on, I kept four-wheeling. I did I can't even count how many events I did of yours. I couldn't even think. I remember the one, and I think we were in Jellicoe when when it rained so bad, the mud was so terrible, and we were down by Battleship. And I swear that you were there with your hat on, standing there in the pouring rain. And I came off Battleship, and I turned, and then they had that big long hill next to it with the flat rock next to it. And you had to go I mean, it was, I'm in, what is a 5.0 Atlas with 540 gears. So I'm in second gear and low range, and the motor's at 7,000, popping off the, blowing off, the blow-off valve was going off, and we're climbing up that hill, and I came up when you had to go around a rock. You guys did a great job of making us wreck our shit all the time. Thank you. Come up and get around a cone. So I went up and I'm rear steering around this cone. I'm trying to swing it around because everybody was hitting the cone. And of course, the smart thing to do that you wanted us to do was to get the front tires through, take the cone with your back left. Nobody was going to make the cone, except Charlie was going to try to make the cone like an idiot, like all the rest of us idiots, And I hit it so hard with the rear steer turn that I flung around. When the truck loaded back up on the other side, the tires are now turned uphill underneath, that it flipped me over to the roof and all the way over again. And the mud was like a big slug of it came in the truck, and I went all the way back onto the wheels again. And you're like, and I remember you standing there and you're like, you gotta, the progress, you gotta get through it. I'm like, I didn't get through it. I'm screaming, and the little kitchen timer is going off up there that you got 1 minute left. And, I think at this time it might've been still 1,000 back in the day when you guys used to count. That was a whole nother story when I got the loophole with that and I got in trouble for doing that thing. But I finally got out and finished, and it flipped over, and there was mud, and I hate the mud, and it was just a mess and everything else. But that was a great event down there too. We had, guys, we just went for it. We had no business doing the stuff we were doing. It was insane, right? Even then, you got to look at it now, what you put us through, what you understood. That was insane.
Yes.
Remember that drop-off thing we did?
The off of that battleship one where we had that wedgie.
Yeah.
And we called it the poop chute.
Yeah, that's it. You drive off with your left, you're leaning, then the back tire would catch, and you drive out so you were actually over the access point. You had to drive out in your front wheels. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
We cut a tree out in that area just so that we could get to that crack line.
I remember. That was something. But like I said, memories.
Remember, it was a bonus.
Yeah. Well, come on, let's be real. That's the regular line for anybody who's in the game, right? You put cones on it, you paint it a different color. If you don't try it, you either got to go get a new skirt when you're done, or you got to deal with everybody else. That's it, right?
Right.
That was it. So back in the day, we were going for it, right? It was just it was a different time, and that moon buggy treated me really, really well, and I wheeled all over with that. I did a lot of events with that. I traveled all over. I broke a bunch of stuff on it and had to go from lightweight stuff to heavier duty stuff because I wasn't as light and I had a little more power than some of those other cars did that were first built. But we learned and got our way through it, and I was competitive with it. I had a lot of fun doing that. That was a great time. And like I said, Dave Kemner was incredible, and that's when Troy was building all those Wasp chassis, the Badlands chassis, and Jesse went to work with him. Jesse moved, he did the mud truck stuff and everything else. He built Top Truck Challenge, and then he went there and he was building stuff, and he was, still is incredibly talented. But just between going to Tennessee and, then in Pennsylvania and Indiana, and we were all over the place, and it seemed insane to get in the truck and drive 15, 16, 17 hours straight and sleep in the back seat or get a hotel room, wake up the next day, go compete for 2 days, then, wait just enough so that we could maybe get a check. The sponsor would give you, if BF Goodrich would give you $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, first, second, or third, a hat, we get $500 for being there. And it cost us 10 grand to get there to beat the crap out of our stuff. And we wheeled for, 15 minutes. And I'm like, I just drove 36 hours to wheel for 40 minutes. And that's if your stuff didn't break.
Yes.
God forbid it broke, then you were really, and this is before, 35 spline axles, some of us had them, but this was before there was real, I had my moon buggy when I saw the special yokes that like the Spider Trax yokes now that Curry started those. I asked John Curry about buying a set of those, and he said, "You can't buy those, kid." That's what he told me. And I took pictures of them and sent them to Dave Kemner. And actually that's how talented Dave Kemner was. He built them right in his shop, and he sent them out to get broached and everything else. But I had those back in the day, and Jack from CTM, just a great guy. But I have to tell you, that was some of the best times of my life. My wife and I were dating at the time. Then we got engaged while that was going on. She was traveling around with me, going four-wheeling and doing stuff. And in between this, I was always wreck wheeling somewhere, I was always picking up a truck and a Toyota and putting 40s on it or 43s and lockers, or I'd build a tube chassis. You know, I've been lucky enough to have some cool rigs through the years. I had Mike Schaefer's first Arca Suzuki. I had that for a year or two. And I had Chris Durham's aluminum body CJ6 with the 360 in it. I had that for a few years. You know, I did a lot of horse trading. You know, I shuffled stuff around and bought, sold, traded. You know, I like doing that. So I ended up with a lot of different vehicles through the years. And it's funny, my 2-seater, my 4-seater, both the Rock Crushers, the ones that I built, are both still out there. The 2-seater's in Indiana and the 4-seater is in like Alabama or something like that. I still see pictures of them and stuff. They're out there. So my moon buggy, I took apart. I took that apart and I sold the frame and the chassis and some other stuff from it. I sold the motor. Alan Woodson bought the motor from me and forget it or whatever. I sold a bunch of the stuff and started building something else from there on. But yeah, I did a lot of that stuff. A lot of 4-wheeling, a lot of traveling, wasted a lot of money, tried a lot of things, but I would never, ever change it. I slept on the side of the road next to canyon walls and made more wrong turns. I drove 200 miles the wrong way. One night I got off the exit to get fuel in like New Mexico. Kyle was asleep. I got back on the highway going the wrong way. I drove 200 miles back from where I just came. He woke up. He said, we were just here when I went to sleep. I said, well, I don't know. I went the wrong way. You know, I mean, I've been through all that. I was lucky. Tom Woods used to let me leave my truck and my trailer and all my stuff out there with him. I'd put it at his place so I could fly out for some of the West Coast events. But it was a good stuff. And then, you know, life economy crashed. I was building a new shop. My dad was sick for a little bit and I was busy. You know, I was always running and doing stuff at the marina, but he was behind the counter and doing all the, you know, kept the business running. It was his business at the time. And I was just running as much as I could. And then he was sick and I had to step up a little bit more there. He's all good. My dad's perfect still. Him and my mom are great. But I had to step up a little bit more there and do a little bit more, which rightfully so. I got my time to play. And then I said, with the economy, I had just borrowed a bunch of money to build a new repair shop. And I got hit 3 months after I borrowed all the money. Everything went wrong. So I was trying to get out of that. So I kind of slowed down. But I had, in that whole time, I had been building a truck with Dave Kemner, but just to go wreck wheeling. I had swore off competition. I had kind of said I was tired of human error of did he or did he not hit the cone? And, you know, I was kind of getting tired of always being the bridesmaid. You know, I was just good enough to be within a few points of the winner, and one bad call. And it seemed like in my mind, you know how you get, you know, they were always against me. And I got tired of being, and they weren't, you know, the judges were great people. I never held anything against them. I just, at one point I went to an event and it was Matt Dees and Jesse and a whole bunch of us were there. And one of the other competitors, I think it was Matt Dees, said, I have video my wife took of Charlie clearing the gate. Can we use that? And they said, no, we can't use video evidence of it. And I just said, at that point, I packed all my stuff up and I went home. I said, I'll go play in my own sandbox now. I just couldn't, I was tired of not winning, spending all that time and effort. And I was not the best. I knew I wasn't, but I was good enough to be in that group and, you know, that type of thing. From that, when I got rid of all that stuff, I went back home and I decided I wanted to go trail 4-wheeling again. I wanted to conquer all those trails, but I didn't really care so much about the cones. I just wanted to go 4-wheeling. So I started building my big silver truck. And I did that with Dave Kemner. And I think I covered up until then. Heck, that's a lot of shit. You know what I mean? I did a lot of stuff up until then. And I met some great people. And Dave Kemner said to me, let's build something cool if you're going to build a trail truck. And I knew what I wanted. I wanted 4-wheel steering and I wanted a lot of horsepower. And I had the general idea and he was willing to build it. And I had another truck and I said to him, if you build it for me, I'll supply all the parts. Just build the whole truck. I'll buy all the parts and I'll give you this other truck I have, which happened to be Chris Durham's old aluminum CJ. That I was wheeling that. So Dave agreed and we started on that build. And I bought a 434 old school small block Chevy. It was like about 600 and some odd horsepower and 450 foot-pounds of torque, like perfect trail truck. You know, yeah. needed like a 4,500 stall to get moving. I went ahead and had that motor and I got a turbo 400 and then I bought a stack. I left Atlas because I wanted a 3-speed. I wanted to be able to rip in the middle gear and have the low gear. way back when Tom and Eddie from Spider Tracks were in New Jersey, I had wheeled with them quite a few times. So I had a relationship with those guys. And I got one of the very first sets of the Spider Tracks axles from them. And I took those axles and I used those in this truck. And as we were building it, I didn't want sponsors. I had had enough of being beholden to someone else to have to be here or be there. I said, I will just write the check. It's cheaper in the long run for me. I don't want to, and then I can buy whatever I want. I don't have to say, I think this is better, that's better. Not that I did that with my sponsored stuff, because if someone offered me something I thought it was junk, I wouldn't take it. But certainly I ran comparable pieces, whoever gave me the free thing, if they were both good. But now I don't do, everything we have, we buy because I believe in it. I think it's the right stuff to use for our type of wheeling. So we decided we were going to build an aluminum tub. It was going to be a Willys tube chassis, 4-wheel steering, coilovers and bumps. And we started on that process, and that was probably 2006. And then it took a couple of years because, you know, Dave was in no rush. I had a lot going on. Then King of the Hammers happened. And everybody, and how do you go from being a Rockcrawler, you know, to doing that? Oh, and in between then, that damn XRRA, they came to Paragon, and JT Taylor, I don't even know who else it was. There's a whole bunch of the guys came up and they had a rock race event. And they begged me to come down there. So I came down, I let the water out of the tires of the moon buggy. And it was me, JT, Eric Miller, John Boring. There was maybe only 6 of us there. This was when Eric Miller, you know, he was a baby back then. You know, he just had his gold.
His dad used to have to sign his release.
Yeah, he was like, you know, he was a kid, you know, I mean, great kid and talented. His TJ, his Rubicon looked like it was a crushed up can. It was so beat up. Every panel was hammered on it. But I ended up in that XRA event on a cold, windy morning at the end of the season. And I won it with a 4-cylinder with barely any speed, but just because I could hold my foot to the floor and it wasn't going to roll and it wasn't going to break, and it just bounced around and went through everything. And I won this little event. It was nothing. It was a nothing event, but it was fun. They started doing the King of the Hammers and things started evolving. And while I was building this, I wanted the ultimate trail rig, 4 seats, heat, top, so all the different, and I want to be able to do everything with it. And while I was building that, one of my old sponsors called me up and said, I'd like you to race King of the Hammers. And I said, I don't have that kind of money or that kind of resources. Just going to California, I know what it takes, and I'm not looking to do that. And they said, well, it's in February, so what else are you going to do? And I said, well, save money. And I said, I've been broke for so long now from rock crawling. I was just coming back from it, and then the economy crashed, and I was really hanging on by a thread. And I was slowly piecing together my truck. And I had the wheels and tires from the moon buggy, the axles from it. You know, I had a whole bunch of stuff saved that I kept saving. And then those tires that BF Goodrich had sent me, I never used all what ended up being a couple of hundred of them at the end. You know, I mean, I just kept moving them along to fund the project.
Yep.
I guess, I don't know, whoever called me about doing King of the Hammers, I don't really remember who it was. But they said, I'll even help you. We'll get a whole bunch of people to give you some stuff, and we'll get you some money and this, that, and the other. So I said, you want me out there that bad? You go ahead and just get me all the stuff. I said, and figure out how to get it done. I said, and I'll work on getting somebody, and I'll work on getting it built and done. And lo and behold, they called me back, and I got shocks and bump stops and springs and center sections and I mean wheels, tires, like, and I had a lot of stuff already, but I was getting new stuff so I could sell the old stuff and liquidate. And I got all these things were getting given to me. Now all of a sudden I realized again, I had committed to now going across the country. I only been to the Hammers a couple of times, not nearly knowing what it was. Now they want me to go fast in the desert, right? What do I know about that, right? And I said, all right, we'll do it. And I had spent a lot of time four-wheeling, a lot of time. I had a good couple of trips for the last few years with Bill Avista from up in Canada, who was a really good guy and a good friend of mine. And he had so much tech knowledge and stuff and a lot of things, but he was in the Canadian military and he was a navigator. And I'm lucky I can find my way to work. I'm terrible when it comes to being anywhere. I don't know what people go, head north. I'm like, I don't know which way is north. I'm like, it doesn't, not on the truck in front of me. I got no clue. So I called him up and said, you want to race King of the Hammers? And he said, are you serious? I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm building a truck and it's not done yet. And I got parts. So he got involved and got some more people to throw us some more stuff. And I had some great people that gave me some money and a lot of parts and pieces. And again, like everything, when everybody's getting ready for King of the Hammers or something, it came down to the last 2 weeks before we were ready to leave for King of the Hammers. This truck was not nearly, or excuse me, before we were supposed to race, we had to qualify now. That's right, we had to qualify. Roush Creek had a qualifier, and it was whatever the date was, and we were down to the wire now to get done. So about 5, 6, 7 of the guys from Canada all came down. My group of guys, we all went to Dave's shop in Pennsylvania and worked a marathon for 4 or 5 days. And I mean, mountain wheels, tires, bleeding brakes, getting, everything done on it. And we did all this work to get the thing ready. And as we're doing everything, we finally get it to run, and it's smoking so bad because it was a motor out of a race car with a tune in it for like a 10-second car. And it was just craziness. We finish it late the day before we have to be at the race the next day. So we finish it at like 5 o'clock. I take it out in Dave's backyard behind his house, and I blow a bunch of donuts with it, and I hit a big dirt mound, and I jump it over the dirt mound. And I said, all right, we're good. I'll be all right. It won't overheat. It's got a big radiator, a big transmission cooler. It's got 4-wheel steering, good seats and seat belts. I'm good to go. So he said, spend a couple more minutes with this. I said, all right. So I started doing donuts in the wet grass, and I must have been at 6,000 RPMs blowing donuts. And when I let off the gas, the pressure from the steering pumped a bunch of the the steering came out of the reservoir and dumped on the exhaust and made a big flash fire. It was just done, just finished. Like it's been out for a half hour. We just had enough time to look at it. The stickers and the body was perfect. There wasn't a dent in it. It looked mint. Had a flash fire. We got that out real quick and figured out how to fix that. And we took it the next morning and went to that Roush Creek qualifier, and we showed up, no test time, no nothing. Just buckled in, put on our suits. And of course it was a muddy mess at Roush. First lap did okay. Second lap, everybody was broken on that Trail 5 climb. I went and hit Trail 5 and started going up it, and we were sliding. So I hit the rear steer to go sideways across it. The rear caught. I flipped over. And I went, that's it. It's over. We're done. We're upside down. We're off the trail. Oil in the cylinders. And Bill actually said, come on. Let's go. And we got the winch out, and we went out to the tree and back over and, flipped it all the way back over. And to my surprise, it started right up. No smoke. I didn't pull the plugs, and we got back in and buckled up, and you're putting the window, can't race it out the window net. That was the big, all the races. Got to have your seatbelts, got to have your Parker pumper, you got to have the, all that crap that makes you a terrible rock crawler when you don't know how to rock crawl with it. You got to practice with it. And we got all buckled in and shot right up the hill then, and we started going. I started just passing everybody and just passing and passing and passing. And I got in a groove where I knew the 2 spots on the hill to climb and the other spot on the other side. And we ended up finishing the race. And I think we were top 5. Maybe, I don't know if we were 4th or 5th or 3rd. I really don't remember, but top 5, which got us into King of the Hammers, which was too bad. I wish it would never have gotten us into it, But we qualified for King of the Hammers, went home, and we're trying to fix all the things that were wrong and everything that we had to do to qualify and everything to get ready. And that led me to going out west again and spending more money and more time and RVs and trailers and transporting and, everything. And it was, don't get me wrong, I would never change any of it, because the stuff we did and the things we learned, it made me who I am. My kids, my son's behind the camera over here right now, watching. And he would say to me all the time, Dad, how do you know how to do that? I had no choice. If I wanted that, that grill to be that width, I had to cut the grill and make it work. If I wanted that to be, I'm not by far, I don't have the skills of some of these other guys, but I made it work. And I learned by doing those things, and I met some incredible people. But that qualified us for King of the Hammers in 2010. I damn near went broke trying to figure out how to get out there. No qualifying back then. It was just luck of the draw where you drew. And I remember being out there in the morning. We're all lined up, and you're two at a time getting ready to start. And I had I still do have a lot of horsepower, and we joke around about it all the time. My Doug Bigelow, who's one of my best friends as well. I've known Doug for I don't even know how long. We rock crawled, we raced together, but he's my friend. And, he always teases me, I got 9 million horsepower, and I remember lining up for the start of King of the Hammers, And there was next to me, there was a rear engine V8 two-seater lined up next to me. And, every Parker pumper, and I never raced with a pumper and a helmet and comms and all that. It was the first time was going to be out there. And I lined up at the line, and I, got my shifter, and Will from Heavy Metal has always been a great guy to me, taking pictures and videos. Will's got cameras on my truck, so I got cameras pointing at, and don't get me wrong, I love it. I'm a ham, but it was a lot all at once, and we pull up to the line, and I'm in high gear, and we load up, and the guy drops the flag, and we take off, and I don't put my foot to the floor. So the little buggy next to me starts passing me. So Bill's like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I'm watching for the things." He said, "This guy's passing you." I went, the first 50 feet. The whole plan was conserve the rig, drive your own race. We weren't 50 feet into it. And he said, "This guy's passing you." I was right to the floor. I went out, bucking, 2-inch coilovers on it. not knowing any idea what I was doing. And we got, I'm going to say 50 or 60 miles into the race. There was a big traffic jam. We were going around someone. I backed up. We bent the rear steering arm a little bit, and it made the tire catch onto the frame. And when I went to move again, the tire was locked, and it broke the Detroit locker. We knew we were either going to go into the next trail and screw everybody, and we couldn't get to a pit, and we could, you couldn't go backwards on the course. So we were in that spot where we had to call it, which was frustrating. I had a Detroit locker back at the pit, and we could have finished maybe in the middle of the night. If we would have got to the pit, we would have finished in the middle of the night. I say that, who knows? I mean, you want to think you would have, something else could have broke, but that ended our day there. But once again, the hammers took a piece out of me, and it took its toll, which was awesome. I had a great time doing it and a great experience again. It was that typical, that joke, great time heading out there, all the world's, your oyster, you're excited, then you're going home, everybody's like, no money, tired, dirt every part of your body, you're beat up, you're like, this sucks. I left, I've been gone for 2 weeks. Why? I drove 40 miles.
Yeah, but you know what? That 40, 50, 60 miles is still better than those guys that go 2 miles. It's amazing how many people go out there for the first time. They have, refinanced their house so they can build this buggy and get out there to the hammers, and then they go 2 miles.
We passed more guys after I made that first initial thing, and I went off a big bump and the back bucked in the air. I slowed down, and I was ahead of the other guy we were racing. But we went, then the next 2 miles, I think Jesse Haynes was broken. He was probably the only, he was the only person, real well-known person that I knew his car that was broken. There was just in the whoops, it was like littered out cars everywhere. We were 5 miles into it, and they were broken all over. But I never forget, I was coming across, and I have no idea where I was. I was in the desert in California. I was racing King of the Hammers, and I was going across, and I was doing probably 35 miles an hour through the whoops, 40 miles an hour at best. Jason Shearer came by me in the old Schaefer car that he redid.
Right.
I think that was the first. He didn't win that year, but it was the first year he drove past me. Like I said, wow. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I couldn't believe it. I kept plugging along. I got out to the dry lake bed, and I made the left onto it. And my car had a lot of top end. We got it up over 100 miles an hour. And I had the helmets on and else, and it was awesome. And I'm wailing along. And on my right, Shannon came by me. And he went by me. I was doing 100, 101, 102. And I was, I had no business going that fast. I'm just the way I was going to, right? He went by me, Rich. The noise, it was like, what the heck was that? That the 8 into 1, and but he went by, and he could have been 50 feet away, but he said, you know who I am. He drove by 5 feet away from me, and I love Shannon. We're friends, he's just a great guy. His family is wonderful, but he must have went by 5 feet away from me. He had 100 feet, on either side of me, but he made sure he came by close enough that it was so loud and so dusty and everything else. And I remember I got up Lake Bend, and you have to make a left and go up between some rocks and a sandy little hill. And when I came off that thing, he wasn't even, I couldn't even see him. He was so far gone. He must have hit that at 100 too. It was just gone. What a trip. And I forgot to tell you, when I first got out there, you'd think I would have learned from my first trip to the Hammers when I was stuck and Chris broke down else. I went out to pre-run with Bill, and we're out and we're driving along, and now I'm trying to practice with the seatbelts tight and the Parker pumper and the helmet and the GPS on and all that stuff. And I'm on, I think it was Aftershock. I don't really remember. It was a trail with big rocks. That's the best I could say. And I'm practicing and I'm going up and I'm trying to get through this one spot, and my truck was wide compared to most things. I had it wider because it was taller, so I wanted the width. And I kept trying to get through this spot. While I was trying to get through it, at one point, I cut the rear steering, I backed up a little bit, and I got a better line at it to try to get up and crawl over the top of the rock and go around it. And I knew what I wanted to do. So I backed up again, and this time when I backed up, of course, you didn't have a mirror on the side of the car back. This was before everybody had those cool clamp-on mirrors and stuff. And I put the car in reverse, I backed up, and the back left tire dropped off, and it flipped me over onto my roof. Middle of the canyon, upside down, wasn't running with anybody else. Now my antenna is buried in the ground. I don't even know if it was, if it got ripped off or not. Can't reach anybody on comms. Getting dark again. We pull out the winch and we run it to a big rock up on the side. And, you put it on this massive rock and you're sweating trying to get there, and you pull the winch and the rock falls down. You get the high lift out, because the thing's upside down. You got all the valves all shut off, and you start high lifting on the roof bar, right, to get it a little bit further ahead. Then you stack rocks and you put the truck back down on it. Then you put rocks under the high lift jack and you get it up and you got it about halfway, and you try to winch again and the rocks fall down or the winch line breaks, right? So I'm about giving up here, and all of a sudden here comes Nazir, I think it was Nazir with the IFS and Dave Cole with that very first IFS car that they had built. Maybe it was Kirby or someone, their car.
Yep,
whatever.
Kirby. Yep.
It was unbelievable. They come pulling in, and they get out and they go, "What the fuck are you doing?" I said, "Well, I was, oh, Jesus, get out of the way." They put the winch out of the front. It dragged me back over again onto my wheels. Thank God it started up and everything else. They left, and they were like, "Don't come out here by yourself, you idiot," And I'm like, "All right, I'm sorry," You think I would have known that already? I'd already made this mistake, But we got out of there and got everything fixed up. And like I said, that was my other bad experience out there. But I knew when I was out there, I wasn't cut out for racing with this truck. And I knew I didn't have $100,000 or $150,000 to build what I wanted. I wanted I knew I watched enough cars that I knew what I wanted. I said, that's it for me. I'm either going to play a little bit, rock crawling, and I'll keep four-wheeling because I love to do it. And that was it. And I said, I'd love to do King of the Hammers. I'd love to race it. I don't know that I'll have the budget or when I will. I got 2 kids that I love, and I want them to have. That's why we have this. We have this truck, the little one, because my kids drive that, and even little Charlie's starting to drive this one now. But awesome. I go on vacation every year. I go to King of the Hammers on a vacation for 2 weeks to go four-wheeling, and we spend every event we can go to around here that fits my schedule. We go four-wheeling whenever we can. Maybe this year we'll do a competition somewhere. I keep saying that. Just never seems to fit in the right thing. I said, you guys pick it always around boating season. It's terrible for me, But I do love four-wheeling still. I never stopped. I never got out of it. It's just I did less and less of it. And, when you don't have money and you say, do you want to climb that hill? And you know that if you break an axle shaft and it's $1,200 for a shaft and you don't have a spare one, you're like, I'll try it a couple times, but not like I did 10 years ago. Or, well, maybe 20 years ago now, But it was a lot of good times, and I love going to King of the Hammers, and I love going to rock crawling events, and I thank God for the internet and watching and learning all my friends that I've met through the years. I mean, I keep in touch with them. It's like we live right next door in the same development, with all the pictures and the thing. I mean, look at this, what we're doing right now. Yeah. Who would have thought in that parking lot in the middle of Pennsylvania? I mean, there was one truck stop that was off that exit, and then that crappy old hotel the next exit up in that little area that we met there. And all these years later, it's and I see you every year at something, and now I'm introducing you to my son. Yep. I remember when Little Rich was Little Rich. Yes. I mean, that's like and now my son wasn't even born, or my daughter. So now I have my 2 children who I'm trying to get them into it. I always say that was the best thing that happened to me was big trucks and four-wheeling, because it kept me out of trouble, and it taught me so much stuff. It taught me. I have an old Corvette with a blower motor I've had forever. I just don't get rid of it because it's not worth enough to sell, but it's nostalgic enough that it's a 72, and my son's pointing at me that it's going to be his, But I like hanging on to my stuff, and I like learning. And if like something like the Corvette, I don't know that I want to build a a 4-link and a rear end and a shock setup to put in it. Not that I wouldn't, but try to go drag racing. It's not my thing, but I'll certainly work on one of my trucks and do something and, and do it. I mean, granted, I did a lot of that, but I realized my talent, like I said, had been the yardstick, the crayon, and the torch were my main tools. That was it for me. But then I started, like I said, people, Tim from Liquid Iron Industries in New Jersey, I had him do some work for me. And talk about a talented guy that he did a lot of great work for me. I had a Campbell moon buggy with an LS in the back that I course traded for, and I had that for a while. I ran around with that. I think I even might have rock crawled that at a local event once. He worked on this truck and that truck, and then I went back out to King of the Hammers with Dean Benner, because Dean and I are good friends. And Dean and I hustled together and got another guy, and we got 3 of us and a guy to tow us out there a few years back, maybe 2014 or 2015. And I went 4-wheeling, and I realized the no pressure and no racing and just hitting all the trails and seeing all my friends and, talking to everybody was better for me because I couldn't afford to do anything else anyway. It was just a great time. So I went out and enjoyed it. And then I took 1 year off, and then every year we go back again. And I started going, Alan Woodson. He's been rock crawling
for a long time.
So when I started rock crawling, Alan had a Toyota, either a 4Runner or a pickup that he was 4-wheeling with. And then he bought his first chassis from Grady McLeod, who won Top Truck Challenge in '99. He was selling those chassis
Grady,
back.
there's a name for you.
Yeah, Grady McLeod, yeah. Most people, and there's another guy, talk about ahead of his time. The quarter elliptical suspension and the airbags he had in that little Willys he built. It was very, very trick little car. But then he built some new chassis. I don't remember what they were called. But anyway, Alan bought one of those, and then Alan realized that he had magic in his fingertips, and then Alan and I started talking again and went to King of the Hammers together, and my truck needed some work. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And we started talking about it. And then that was it. Every year after King of the Hammers, Alan would keep my truck and he would just redo it. And that's now Big Silver is, Alan did, he did all new sub underneath the whole new subframe, new transmission. We went and put a Hero transfer case in it, brand new Spider Trax axles in it. We went to 40 spline axles, Gearworks 10-inch ring and pinions, and new trail ready bead locks and new super swamps. We did, over the course of 2 years, he rewired it and built some consoles, and he really took it from being my work, which was added to Dave's. So Dave Kemner did some beautiful work. Charlie did some shitty work that worked, but like I said, 1/2-inch thick steel and, cut it with a torch and just get it welded the best you can, but it worked. And then we got Alan on there, who started looking at it in a new light. And Alan would say, this is nice, but why change this and this? We could change everything, which was a great business move because he knew he could get me a little bit at a time to do more and more. And I wanted it to be real nice. And every time I said, well, I only had 42 degrees of steering. Well, I want 50 degrees of steering. Well, you need wider axles and you need this. And I knew what I wanted to make changes on. And he was very accommodating to me. He sold a lot of my parts. He took some on trade, and it was convenient. We'd go to King of the Hammers. He'd keep my truck, and then he would work on it. That's how he ended up in my truck, where I feel I'm at the right spot now, where he really, he should get a lot of props for my truck. He doesn't sponsor me or anything else. I pay him to do everything, and he does an amazing job. But the work he did on my truck now, not only is it strong and done, in my opinion, properly, but the beauty of it, the way he finished it off and the finesse in it, he really did justice to the truck that I've had for so long now, that I've rock crawled with, I've raced with, I've 4-wheeled with. My kids have grown up in it. It went from a 4-seater to a 2-seater, and it's had so many changes through its life. But Alan really took it to the next level, where now when I go to King of the Hammers, I'm not afraid to go in any trail or try anything, because I think it's up to par now, which is a nice feeling. It's nice to have that. So,
awesome. So what's on the horizon? What are you looking to do, hope to do? I know, like you said, little Charlie's driving the rigs now.
Yep.
You're still going to have the marina business.
Yeah. Well, no changes. I'm still busier than ever at the marina. I have my Corona stash right now. This is my Corona mustache that I'm growing. We just got lifted from being non-essential on Saturday. So we're really going to be full on starting next week, really, really be hitting it hard up here in New York, getting boats in the water and getting ready. But as far as the future with me, I don't see that I'll ever stop rock crawling and 4-wheeling. I'll just keep getting stuff built and tinkering and playing. But it's all about my kids now. And that next thing. You know, little Charlie comes with me each year to King of the Hammers now with my group of friends, and he's kind of really fit in. My daughter, who's really into horses, she also is, she's more natural at driving than me or Charlie right now. She just kind of gets in and not much bothers her, and she can kind of feel it and do it. But she goes four-wheeling. I've done a couple of the Ultimate Adventures, a few days with them, and I've taken her on some 3-day rides where we camp and do stuff so she can play. But I would say that we've got a couple of projects that I want to do. I want a new Big Silver that's what little Charlie calls our truck. He started an Instagram page for it, Big Silver, and a Facebook page to have some fun and share everything about the truck. I think we're at I don't want to say the limit of, but we've got it to where it's big, it's fun, it does a lot of great things, it's super strong, you know, it's got heat in it, it's got windshield and doors and, you know, big enough fuel tank and, you know, coolers in it. Like you can actually, we leave in the morning at 9 or 10 in the morning. You could stay out till 9 or 10 at night and really enjoy a whole day, whether it rains, it snows. I'm prepared for anything with it, which is, it carries just enough spare parts. We just put we changed after all these years. We went back to Warren winches just because Warren came out with that big 10,000 pound 8274, the upright.
Right.
I wanted more power. I ran a 9,000 pound winch, but with these bigger trails we're getting into, I started to notice we're getting to the point where we wanted better stuff. So I just had Tom Woods made me new drive shafts and upgraded them, not even to anything bigger, just new, because my drive shafts were 10 years old. The winch, we got that new winch because it's got 150 feet of line and it's got more power on it. This gives you the ability to get in more places and not be so concerned about getting out. But I'd like to build a new car for Charlie and myself, but I'd like a car that I already know what I want. I want a 2-seat front engine, 112-inch wheelbase, 55 degrees of steering front and rear, same axles as this, basically, spider tracks and gearworks. But I want something that I can easily move the seat up, because we do get Charlie and these two to drive. He's got some PRP pieces that fit in the seat like a booster, and we've got things that we make that screw onto the pedals so he can reach the pedals. But I'd like one that we actually could move the seat all the way forward and he'd be in the right position to drive. And then when I want to drive, we move it back. But I've looked at a few of the cars that are out there, and I'm just working and trying to figure out who the next person that's going to build me the new car will be. So but that'll, Rich, honestly, is probably going to take a couple of years to come to fruition. But I want to be able to put him in that. In the meantime, I think we're going to take what Charlie calls Little Silver, our other truck. I think we're going to it's got high pinion rock crusher Dana 60s in it, Rich.
Wow.
Something, right? Way back when. And it's a neat truck. Brannick did the shafts in this one. And it's a real great truck. It's got an Atlas and a 4.3, and Charlie really wheels it a lot. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to build the set of axles we want to use in a future car. I'm going to build them and put them in this, stretch the wheelbase, put 4-wheel steer in it, and bring him to the next level. Because this is it's an old school pro mod car that we put big tires on and full hydro on. It used to be Jack Bedio's car that I drove a couple of times.
Okay.
And I upgraded a bunch of stuff on it. But I think we're going to stretch this out and make this one a little more capable next, because we're just at the verge where we want to take 2 trucks. Charlie's going to drive one, and I'm going to drive the other when we start to go through the trails. But I would like to get to that point on this, and then while that's going on, figure out who's going to build me the chassis I want and what I want exactly. I know Little Rich has got a new car being built by Jesse right now, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, I saw. It looks pretty awesome. So I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I've talked to everybody so many times about cars through the years. I'm just trying to really get down to brass tacks. You know, I love Twisted Customs. You know, Jason, you can't deny it. Still to this day, those cars work incredible. Obviously, Jesse does some great stuff. Alan, he's building things that are just incredible. I mean, you saw him at Trail Hero with Rich's event. I mean, how good his old car did out there with no portals in it. And
building 2 new cars right now.
Yeah. And I saw. I know that with everything that's going on, that seems like the next thing for me, is that we're going to build another. My vision down in the future is for my son to be in a car that can do anything we want to go out and conquer. And I want to follow him. And if he gets in trouble, he rolls over, or when he rolls over or he gets stuck or breaks something, I have my truckers with him, Big Silver's there to pull him out or to get it. But I want to, coach him through it and teach him. That's my big thing. And my daughter too. I want Hannah to be able to do all that. So I figured the next step is probably Little Silver getting some new axles and some upgrades. We just put rugged radios in it. So now we've got comms between that and Big Silver so we can talk. Because it's funny, he's 12 and my daughter's 15. So they're at that age now where it's different. They're not babies and they're learning what to do, and I'm proud of them. And more four-wheeling. That's what I want to do. I want to go four-wheeling more. I would love to do one competition this year. I don't know where or what, but just one. The last time I competed was with you at Roush Creek. That was, I don't even know how long ago.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, though. I had a Campbell moon buggy with an LS in the back of it. I got second or third at that event. I think it was Sean Hollick, Dean Benner, and myself were the top three. It was within a couple of points. But that was the last time I competed, and it's been a while since I've done anything else. So I'd like to get in the cones just to do it again for fun. I don't.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe one this year. Maybe one. That's what I do. And I could take my big old dumb mud tires and run with all the special tires you have to win. You can't win unless you have, let's see, it's crawlers. You got to have crawlers. You got to have treps. I think Nito now, right? Or you can only go fast with Nitos. Or can you crawl?
Yeah, Nitos are only fast. They don't have.
So you cannot go fast in the desert unless you have Nitos. Pro Comp is still out there, right? I guess you have to have them. So if you don't have one of them, you can't win. So I just would like to go and maybe not win, but just at least hang with the guys with the good parts. That would be cool for me.
There you go. So as long as you're going to stay in the off-road rock sport lifestyle, and whatever you decide to do is awesome. We'd love to see people stay in it and bring up the next generation in that lifestyle, because it's a great lifestyle. It really is.
I wouldn't change it for the world. And it only came to me. I said, my dad was never into off-roading. He was a kid from the Bronx who, he raced. He had some built dragsters and race cars and stuff. And he did that and then bought a marina, and Bigfoot is what did it to me, and then got me into the big trucks and then off-roading and so on and so on. And I love it. And I'll tell you, I hope my kids, I try not to push it on them. I say that. I was having a conversation at King of the Hammers with Eric Miller, and he's saying, I'm not pushing racing on my son. Meanwhile, he's got, here, hold the race car. Here, push the little race car. Go broom, broom. So no, you're not pushing. Just like I'm not pushing my kids to do it, But I do hope that my kids want to do it with me. When I bought my trailer and my truck, which is getting a little older now, I'd always said one day I'm going to load both the trucks in the trailer, and I'm going to put my son in the passenger seat of my dually. My dually is still the one I had. It's an 04. I've had it for a long time, my Duramax. I want to be able to put that in the trailer, hook that up to the trailer, and then go somewhere with my son or with my daughter, my son, and my wife, and go four-wheeling for a couple of days and, have that going on and let them, it's great because my buddy Chris and Dave Eckholm and all them, they're all a part of it, and Charlie's meeting them. Let me bring him around. Come here, Charlie. Come around and say hi real quick. So you got one more second. I got to have Charlie.
No worries.
Come here. And Hannah's too busy doing something else. So this is little Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
You remember Big Rich?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
We were driving through in the middle of the, not the middle of the
Yeah, I got in trouble when I was.
Yeah.
I got yelled at for driving through where I saw you that day. But anyway,
You're not supposed to mention that stuff.
Yeah. Yes. And he does the Instagram for Big Silver, so the big_silver 4x4.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah, so he's
great.
That's his thing. I let him do that for fun, and he's coming with me to King of the Hammers and Rockcrawling and doing everything else. And his sister, I said, does a bunch of it too. So I'm hoping that we keep doing the stuff together, because to me, you've lived it. What could be better than this?
There is nothing better than that.
I know, I'm amazing.
But anyway, I think I don't even know how long.
You are the son of your dad, aren't you?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. No doubt about it. I get a lot of those calls from the teacher, that the teachers at school, and they tell me, "Do you know what he did?" I said, "What did you know?" It's not that he did something wrong. It's just, do you know what he did? And I went, "Yeah, he's my son. I understand."
Acorns. They never fall far from the tree.
Yep. Thank God.
There you go.
Well, thank you for this, Rich.
Charlie, thank you very much for coming on board with us and letting everybody out there in the social media land know something about you and the beginning of the sport. We appreciate it. I hope to see you out at the Hammers again next year, and hopefully, come by Paragon. We're going to be there sometime this year. I think in July.
Roush Creek or Anderson?
Roush Creek. Yeah, not Paragon. Yeah, Roush Creek. There you go.
Yeah, I know.
Yep, we were talking about
you're having an event there this year.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And please come by, say hello.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I know it's again in the middle of summertime, and it's your busy time. So
We're talking about going where Charlie and his sister are going to drive maybe some of the obstacles, and maybe I'll drive some of it, and we'll mix it up a little bit. I know we talked about it, and I'm hoping to make that happen. I want them to get that experience and everything else. So very
we
cool.
look forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Thank you for everything. And Rich, just real quick, there's been 1 million people out there and that have been so great. And I know that you doing this will bring light to the guys that really did, made the rules and made the parts and did the things where people just have no clue what we started with and what we worked into and then what the manufacturers developed to make us be able to do what we're doing. And I want, there are some companies out there, and you know them as well, like Tom Woods and Vic from Advanced Adapters. They're so good to the sport. I hope people know what they've done to keep us all going through the years, and not just in sponsorship, but constantly, R&D. I mean, look at, Spider Tracks and all that. And I said, they're not my sponsors or anything, and I'm not getting anything for this. They really are incredible companies, people that followed their heart and really made it possible for us to do some awesome stuff. I just want to say thank you to all of them, because for somebody like me to be able to go out and four-wheel like I do and be able to not break stuff on a regular basis because of the equipment that's been developed over all these years, it really has made my life. I wouldn't want to four-wheel the way we used to with 31 spline and those parts that would fall apart when you looked at them wrong. So thank you to all of them, and thank you to you for keeping the sport going and for Rockcrawling and your family. And I know it's not an easy life and you had a lot of crap to deal with, but thank you for all that. I really appreciate it.
It's for the love of the sport and the love of the people.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, all right, well, we'll let you go, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon, all right?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care, Rich. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.